Hello and welcome back to our YouTube channel. It's Estate Sale Homes Northwest. I'm Emily Cressey, a local real estate agent here in Washington State, and I am talking with personal representatives who have recently inherited a property or are in charge of an estate which owns property and are trying to figure out how to protect it, how to secure that property right away so that it is well taken care of. You're guarding it and keeping it until it can be passed on to the new owner or resident after the death of oftentimes a loved one. So let's go into these steps and make sure that you know everything that's involved with keeping that property secure so that it's in good hands and in good shape for the next party. Step one, and this may seem obvious, you have to identify what real estate is involved. If you're dealing with your parents' estate, they just owned one home or condominium that they lived in, that may be very straightforward. However, a lot of times people will have a second home, a vacation home of some kind, maybe a rental property or an Airbnb property that they owned. It could be out of state. Maybe this Washington state property that you're investigating here is in a different state than where you live. So it can be complicated. Hopefully the decedent kept good records and you can identify if there is more than one home or investment property where it is located. Once you have an idea of what property is involved, you need to collect some important information that goes toward record keeping on these properties. That would be information such as the deed, which is a record of ownership of the property, title, mortgage statements, and tax records. So you may have this on file, hopefully like a paper file that they would have in their office in their home. If not, some of the information may be available on the county recorder's office. For example, King County or Snohomish County here in the Seattle area have records that you can access online. You can get a copy of the deed. And if you're having trouble, there are professionals who can help you with that. And I'd certainly be happy to direct you in that regard if you're having a problem. But get that information because we're going to need it for the next steps. The second step is to secure the property. So if there is a home somewhere, it's a good idea to go over there and take a look at it right away to make sure what condition it's in. You never know if somebody left windows open, if they left the back door unlocked, if the stove is on, right? Sometimes these things happen, and because the home is such a valuable asset, if it has not been tended to recently, or if a lot of people were in, maybe for a wake or some sort of an event, it's a good idea to just go and secure the property. It may even be worthwhile changing the locks. You never know if friends or neighbors have a copy of the key. You don't want people squatting in the property. And you want to make sure that you keep the utilities on. You want to keep the air at a comfortable temperature, not too hot or too cold. That can be hard on things like hardwood floors, pipes, walls that expand and contract with wild temperature fluctuations. So make sure that you keep that house kind of up and running. Maybe you're just on vacation and you're going to be back soon. Another thing that's a good idea on this step is to call the insurance company. The insurance carrier is usually paid through the mortgage company. So if you have mortgage statements coming in the mail, you can look on there or contact the bank and see who the mortgage company is. But you want to let them know that the property is now vacant for the time being. And unfortunately, this will probably increase the amount that you have to pay for your insurance premium, but it's very important because if there were a claim, let's say you secured the property on Monday, the next day a tree fell on the house and rain was coming in, and you didn't get out there again until next month because you were doing a monthly check. Well, now you have a tree that has a hole in the roof and rain has been going in there all month, and that's a big problem. You call the insurance company and you say, hey, we have some water damage from this tree in our roof, and they say, you should have told us the day that it happened. Why did you wait a month? Now there's a lot more damage. We have to pay a lot more to fix it. So that's why you need to make sure you have the correct type of coverage so you don't get denied help by the insurance company when you need it most. Now, I will say if you want to do a professional inspection, it's not a bad idea to make sure something like there's not a small leak happening in the roof or in some of the pipes or something that drip, drip, drip. That might not be a problem if you keep a bowl under it, but you didn't know the bowl was supposed to be there. So it's not a bad idea to get an inspection done on the property just to make sure everything's in good shape. That is something that we can potentially help you with as a real estate office. Property management is within our wheelhouse. So if again, that is something that you'd like help just one time getting somebody into the property or on an ongoing basis to check in, please feel free to let me know. I'm happy to discuss that with you. Next, remember your documentation. Make sure you collect all the necessary paperwork related to the property. Again, property tax records need to be paid in Washington twice a year. If the mortgage is paid off on the property, this will not get paid automatically. So you need to make sure you're paying that in April and October. Likewise, utility bills, because we're keeping the heat on so the pipes don't freeze. We're keeping the water on, things like that. You may be getting utility bills and they may be getting mailed to the decedent's house. So if you're collecting those or you're having the mail forwarded, make sure you keep everything all together. Any homeowners association documents, you might want to let the neighbors know what the situation is so they can be eyes and ears for you at the property and let you know if anything's changed. If it's a rental property, you may have leases, you may have income statements or bank statements related to the property. So make sure that you get your filing in place. I love my manila envelopes. You may do it a different way, but make sure that you're collecting all of that information and keeping it together so you can refer back to as needed. Step 4 is one that you may not have thought of. The idea here is to do a title search. This is something that you can do with a quick look on public records yourself, but typically we bring in a professional title company who will look at the public records and they look for 3 things: ownership, encumbrances, and easements. So ownership is who owns the property, and it's probably going to be in the name of the decedent. Joe and Jane Smith own the property, right? Now they've died. And so you may need to update that information with a death certificate to show that it's now owned by their estate. And an attorney can walk you through this process, but it's good to know what's on there. What if it's Joe and Jane Smith and their brother Tom, who you didn't know was a part owner of the house, but he is for some reason? We want to make sure we're aware of those issues and have the time to get them cleaned up if needed before we go to sell the property down the road. The next thing is encumbrances. This is typically going to be a mortgage if there is a mortgage still on the property, but we can also see other debts tied to the property. Sometimes there's a second or third mortgage. Sometimes there's a home equity line of credit, which is accruing interest every month. Sometimes there's a mechanic's lien. Let's say they had the roof done, but they didn't have the money to pay for it. Now the mechanic is mad. He files a lien against the property. You've got to pay him. And sometimes there can be tax liens if property tax bills have not been paid, IRS liens, all sorts of things can be recorded against the title. And sometimes when people are elderly or they're short on cash, they're not keeping good records, they may not have even realized that some of these things were happening or being recorded against the title of the home. So it's a good idea to check. The last one I mentioned was encumbrances. So sometimes there might be a right-of-way or like a shared driveway, and that's not as relevant in this situation, but it is on the typical title check and it will come with the records if you have a title company. Take a look at that. If you need help locating a title company or knowing what to ask for, please feel free to reach out to me. Typically, if you're planning to sell the property, there's no charge for this. If you're not planning to sell the property, there may be a small fee associated with the paralegal's time to get this documentation together for you. Step 5 is to obtain a valuation for the property. This is something that tells you how much the property is worth. And obviously it's great to know how much the property is worth. Sometimes you need to pay taxes on the estate, and so it's good to know. Sometimes you're planning to sell it, and so that's good to know. Or sometimes one of the heirs might want to buy out his siblings and own the property outright himself. So he may need to know how much the property is worth so he can pay off other people who would also be entitled to a share of the home. There are many different reasons why a valuation can be valuable, and you can pay an appraiser to get a very well-researched, heavily documented, long, thick pile of papers to tell you how much the home is worth. or you can ask a broker like me to give you what's called a broker's price opinion. I'm happy to do that at no charge, and there's no obligation to list the home to sell either. Number 6, you want to comply with legal requirements and probate court procedures. So oftentimes as the house or the whole estate goes through the probate process, there are different steps and milestones that need to be hit. Hopefully you have an attorney or someone knowledgeable coaching you through that process. But one of the things you'll want to do is make sure that you can report on an inventory the value of the home and any liabilities associated with the home, such as mortgage or some of the other encumbrances that we talked about earlier. So just make sure as you consult with your professional that you're following the steps that they give you. There's no real probate police that's going to make sure you turn in your homework on time, but it's important to do and keep good records so that if there is a problem or a fight or some petty grievances with some of the other heirs, because you represent the estate and not yourself, you need to act on everybody's behalf, and you need to be able to show them that you're doing so with good record keeping and by following the suggestions and recommendations made by the court and the attorney. Typically in the Washington area, if you're in maybe a very rural area where it's easy to get paperwork going back and forth, we see people selling the house within maybe 2 to 3 months after the decedent's death. If you're in a busier city and there's just more going on, you don't have the time, the average time frame might be more like 6 months after the death of someone. So again, feel free to reach out if you do have questions about the sale of the property. A lot of times the amount of time that it takes to sell, whether or not it needs to be repaired or updated before sale, how to finance those repairs, and also emptying out the home of personal contents are all things that I specialize in helping people with as a real estate agent in the estate sale and probate niche. So please don't feel like you're stuck doing it on your own. I'm here to help. That's why I have the channel, and I really enjoy working with people who are going through all these wonderful memories that a family home like this can provide. Now, step 7 is very important, and unfortunately, it's not just check the box and you're done. This is the ongoing task of maintaining the property. You don't want to get into a situation where the property is going down in value because you're not taking care of it. We talked before about securing the property and some of the big items like keeping the utilities going, making sure that there's no flooding, making sure that you have the proper insurance and that type of a thing. But what about updating the paint? Does it need new paint? Does it need the gutters cleaned? Does it need the garden weeded or the lawn mowed? Sometimes there are just things that need to be done on a regular basis, or you can start to get letters from the city telling you that you're not keeping up your end of the bargain and the home has become an eyesore. I really recommend checking on the property after any kind of major weather event, be it a storm, a heavy rain, a snow, to make sure that there's nothing bad happening with the property. Water and freezing temperatures are especially dangerous for vacant homes, so just make sure that you're keeping an eye on things, especially during high-risk times of the year. Now, finally, after all of this time babysitting this empty house, you might be at the point where you've got to decide what to do with it next. Typically, people will either keep it as a family home, and if there are multiple heirs, will value the home. And if there are 3 siblings, one of them wants to live there, the other 2 will get paid each a third of the value of the home as their share of the property. The nice thing about someone taking the home is that the depreciation basis is reset, which can be great. You don't have as many taxes owed. Now, more frequently than not, the family home ends up being sold right away. Maybe there's no one that wants to live in it. They already have their own homes. Maybe we need cash to pay the heirs, or sometimes pay taxes and other expenses associated with the estate. So more often than not, the home does end up getting sold, typically within about 3 to 6 months after the decedent's death. And anywhere in that time is a good time to start talking with me or another local real estate agent of your choosing to go ahead and start making the plan for what it's going to take to get the home ready to sell. Is there some time of year that's better than another? Do you plan to do repairs? How do you finance those things? Are you going to have staging, professional photos, videos? What's the marketing plan? So all of those are things that I can tailor to your specific situation in addition to helping you with many of the tasks here, such as selling personal items from the home, repairing the home, securing the home, etc. So as you go through this process, don't feel stuck. Don't feel like you have to do it alone. I'm here to help you. My name again is Emily Cressey. I'm located in Washington State, and I specialize in helping people who are selling probate and estate sale property. You can reach me online at Estate Sale Homes Northwest, and I hope you do. Until then, please keep watching. We have a stack of videos coming up here about everything personal representatives need to know after they've inherited property and are helping the estate handle that. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.